What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Timeless Movie Podcast, episode number 157. My name is Victor Vasquez. Appreciate you joining me on this episode and this channel where all we do is talk about movies. We talk about movies that come out in streaming or in theaters. I try to give you my full and honest thoughts about these movies. And at the end of the podcast, try to decide, is it timeless? Is it something that I can see myself wanting to rewatch or own in a physical media format and just continue to have it in my collection? Now, sometimes these opinions you will agree with, sometimes you won't, and that's totally okay. I want you guys to also voice your opinions. So if you listen on YouTube or Spotify, drop a comment. Let me know that you checked out one of the episodes. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my opinions on a film being timeless. And anybody listening on Apple Podcasts, well, hey, send me an email, timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. You send me all of your thoughts, opinions, any movies that you're anticipating for the rest of 2025. I want to hear all of that stuff as well. Speaking of recent movies that we have been able to watch, episode 156 of the Timeless Movie Podcast is available on all platforms where you get your podcast. And on episode 156, I ended up talking about the new film starring Channing Tatum and Kirsten Dunst, and it is called Roof Man. It is based on the true story of a man named Jeffrey Manchester, and it was such a surprise hit for me. I enjoyed this movie so much. So if you want to find out if I thought it was timeless or not, go check out episode 156 of the Timeless Movie Podcast and let me know if you agree or disagree with my thoughts. All right, everybody, let's go ahead now and segue into this week's movie, in which we are talking about the new film from Luca Guadagnino, and it is called After the Hunt. I have two big reasons as to why I wanted to watch this movie. First reason, the trailer. I saw it a couple months ago, and it really just grabbed my attention. They made it seem very much like a thriller. Obviously, there was going to be a lot of drama dealing with different interactions between characters, but it just seemed like it was something very enticing about the story. So that was one of the reasons. And the second reason, the director, Luca Guadagnino. I got to check out Challengers last year. I've seen Call Me By Your Name. And so there's a lot of different movies that have really worked for me. And so I wanted to give one of his films another shot as well, just to see if this one would become timeless, in my opinion. So with that setup, let's go ahead now and maneuver over to the non-spoiler section and give a little bit more details, like a synopsis, and then my overall thoughts on After the Hunt. Okay, After the Hunt is directed by Luca Guadagnino. As many of you may know, he has directed a lot of different films. He's actually been pumping out a lot of newer movies after the 2020s, but you might know him by Call Me By Your Name, films like Queer, Bones and All, Challengers. So he is just continuing to come out with new stories and new film. This time on After the Hunt, he is working with the likes of Julia Roberts, Andrew Garfield, Io DeBerry, and Michael Stuhlbarg. And all of these actors, as well as others, are kind of helping shape this entire world that he is building in After the Hunt. So what is After the Hunt about? This movie is all about a controversy that happens at Yale University. You essentially get dropped into a world where you have Alma, who is a philosophy professor, and Alma is played by Julia Roberts. She is trying to go for tenure, and one of her colleagues, Hank, who is played by Andrew Garfield, is also looking to go for that tenure position at Yale. Now, they're both really good friends, a little friendlier than you would expect. And so they have this kind of, relationship where they're very friendly and they kind of touch each other in certain ways in a very friendly manner, if that makes sense. And so they're kind of going for that same position. And then we also get introduced to the third main character, which is Maggie. Maggie is played by Io DeBerry. She's actually a student that goes to certain classes under Alma. And so the three of them have a really interesting dynamic. But what ends up happening is one night, Maggie ends up coming to Alma and letting her know that, hey, Hank ended up putting his hands on me. I did not consent for it, and he sexually assaulted me. And so now, this is the basic premise of this situation. Alma is stuck in a pickle. She has a lot of respect and loves her favorite student, Maggie, but she also has a great relationship with Hank. And so now she's kind of put in a position where she has to understand, well, who's telling the truth? Is Maggie telling the truth in regards to what had happened in regards to the assault? And then after she talks to Hank, Hank says, no, this it's not true. I did not try to make an advance at all. I didn't do that. And so now she has to try to decide and decipher who is telling the truth and whose relationship is she going to have to break because it is a conflict of interest. She has something very important with each character in Hank and Maggie. So that is essentially what we're trying to understand as the story goes on, and you get to know a little bit more about Hank, Maggie, as well as Alma and what she goes through as she's trying to get that tenured position at Yale. Overall, I thought this movie was pretty good. I wasn't blown away. Again, it was a more focus on the drama aspect of it, dealing with these very interesting relationships that Alma would have with Hank or with Maggie, and so the story it was still enjoyable to watch. Nothing really gripped me though. Nothing was really just kind of pulling me and having me be on the edge of my seat. Again, the trailer did a really good job to make it seem like it was a thriller, but it actually wasn't a thriller at all. It was just kind of, a lot of dialogue, a lot of conversations, a lot of nonverbal communication, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But, overall, again, good movie. Wasn't terrible, but didn't have this mind blowing type of feeling that I had. Almost like the biggest thing I can kind of compare it to of what I was hoping it could be is like Conclave. That movie came out last year with Ray Fiennes, and that was just choosing a new pope. But there was so much, thrilling aspects to it. There was so much back and forth between different types of cardinals, and it just had this quality where all you see is people talking to each other, and yet there is just so much that you're gaining from those conversations. Here, you gain a little bit of that, but again, not as thrilling. So let me go into a couple of pros and cons because there are things and elements that I really did enjoy of After the Hunt, and some things that just didn't really work. So let's go ahead now and jump into some of the first pros. All right, first pro that I have for After the Hunt is the great camera work that the team was able to pull off in After the Hunt. There are so many very awkward shots, very personal close-ups. You have these very interesting camera placements where you have the camera, above or behind somebody's head, and you can only see half of somebody's face as they're trying to explain their reasoning of what is going on in their situation. Like, for example, there's this specific scene, and it's actually right from the get-go. You just get a sense as to what these characters are doing, even when they're not talking. Like there's times where you're looking at Maggie and she's just listening to Hank or to Alma, and she's kind of giving them looks. Not dirty looks, but she's just giving a interesting type of a look to them as to say, oh, okay, maybe I believe you, maybe I don't. And then Alma, who is a very strong character, she kind of talks with her hands. And so sometimes you'll see the characters just, instead of looking at their face when they're having a conversation, you actually just see their hands moving. And then other times, in cases like Hank, the camera is right dead center on his face. Like he's talking to us, the audience, saying, I didn't do this. What I'm being accused of is not true. And so all of that camera work in many situations, it just felt very unique. And it never felt like every scene that you were watching, it never felt like you were seeing the same kind of style of camera setup or placement. It was always something different. Sometimes you would see kind of like a bird's eye view over somebody's head as they're having a conversation. Sometimes, again, it was behind them, sometimes right in front. And so I really dug how they were able to kind of change up the camera angles and the styles just to kind of give the movie a different type of feeling as you're going through it and just making it feel fresh. Second pro for me was the inclusion of some of the philosophical components of this movie. Alma and Hank are both philosophy professors, and so sometimes you're in their classes as they're going through some type of theory or condition or material that is, related to philosophy. And I also felt like the situation itself in the movie, the entire premise of Alma being right in the middle of two individuals that she cares about and having to decide, like, well, who's telling the truth? What are some of the unconscious bias that I have? Is, do I help Maggie because she's a woman and a woman of color? Do I help Hank because he's just a dear friend and I love him? So there's so many different elements, but I really, again, enjoyed the different types of philosophical kind of conditions that the movie tries to put on you as well, as to maybe like, what would you do in these situations, or what a normal person would do? And so I don't know. I wouldn't say that maybe it's maybe I'm overplaying it in that it's all about philosophy. It's not. It's just certain scenes that just caught my attention, and I really like that. I've always been curious and wanting to know more about philosophy and how it kind of builds a lot of the different types of biases and mindsets that we have. So I thought that was cool that they included bits and pieces of that throughout the movie. All right, and then the third pro for me of After the Hunt is the performances. I mean, you have Julia Roberts, who's a legend. You have Andrew Garfield and Ayo Edebiri, who are both just superstars as well. And this movie, they all deliver. There's never a time where you are feeling like there's like a actor that is out of place. Every single one of them is so unique and so different. I mentioned it a little bit before. Alma being this very strong and this very not a cold character, and that's not actually something that comes up in the movie, but just somebody that is kind of can really remove herself from different types of emotional situations in order to kind of really think logically. Then you have Hank, who is just more of the extroverted type of character. He like is able to kind of talk to students and colleagues, and he's able to just have this type of energy around him. And then you also have Maggie, who is just this student who's trying to do her best and really trying to impress Alma as much as she can. But everybody's got some type of problem. They're all very unique again from each other. Some are more pretentious, some are more serious, others are just trying to appeal to gain more favor from that person. And so I thought that performance and the dynamic between Andrew Garfield, Ayo Edebiri, and Julia Roberts was just really well done. Now, because their performances were so different and so unique, and they just it was just fun watching them on screen. This actually leads me to one of my cons. And so one of my cons for After the Hunt is because these characters do feel a little pretentious, they feel like they're a little bit above everybody else. I feel like you couldn't really connect with any one of them. And so that really sucked. There's actually a moment that happens in the first act to Maggie where they show her doing something, and I'm not going to spoil it, but they show her doing something, and it immediately shines a light on her where now you're like, well, because I saw you do that, I can't really trust you. And so now it becomes very challenging because as she's saying that she was assaulted, you're like, okay, well, she's telling the truth, but why did she steal that thing in the beginning? Or why did she do this? And so it sucks that I couldn't really connect. And this is definitely a personal nitpick, but I just could not connect with Alma, with Hank, or with Maggie in any kind of way where I wanted to see them, succeed, or I wanted to see them get out of the situation. Instead, I'm just watching these three individuals that are flawed, and there's no connection there. And so that was unfortunate. I was hoping that there could be somebody that and again, it's not saying like I'm trying to root for them, but you're just hoping to like get that emotional connection where I want this person to not get in trouble, or I want this person to find the justice that they're looking for. And so I never felt that with any of the three characters. But that's, again, just a personal nitpick on my side. Second nitpick that I wanted to call out is the ending. Something about endings this year in 2025 have just not really hit for me. And once again, I want to make it clear, I'm not saying that this is going to be a nitpick that everybody's going to call out, but just in my opinion, just the way that the film kind of wraps up, I get why they were trying to just end it on a specific note after the accusation and how it ended up causing kind of a ripple effect. But I don't know, I just didn't really feel like it ended on a good exclamation point. And again, not all movies need to end on a specific high, but I was really hoping that this film could end with some type of resolution that really impacted me, and I just didn't get that. Now, let me know. I could be in the minority on that piece of it. If you've seen After the Hunt, let me know down below in the comments. Maybe there was something that I may have missed, but I just feel like the ending was just okay. You have two characters talking about what had happened in the past, what happened with the accusation, and that was it. It just kind of fizzled out and kind of went to black. So again, for me, ending just didn't really work. All right, everybody, those are all the pros and cons that I have for After the Hunt. Now, the question that I always want to ask is, besides, is it timeless? I always like to ask, should you go check this out in theaters? Should you go watch this movie immediately because it's an interesting watch or a story that's really going to move you? In my personal opinion, I would say that this movie is not a run to the theaters and go check it out. I would say that you can maybe watch this one on streaming, or if you buy physical media, you can buy it when it comes out as well. But that would be my recommendation, is just wait for this one on streaming just to check it out. It's not a story that's really gonna, at least for me, in my personal opinion, it didn't move me in that kind of a way. It was interesting, but not something that you have to go out to the local theater and check out right this moment. But I would still recommend, if you find it later on a couple months in streaming, definitely give it a look, because the performances and the camera work, I think, are really well done. All right, everybody. Now that we are done with all the non-spoiler talk, let's jump into spoilers. Let's start talking about, is After the Hunt timeless? But before we do that, if you don't want to be spoiled about this movie, please jump out of the video now, watch the movie, then come back, listen to my thoughts, and let me know if you agree or disagree with whether maybe you didn't really like the camera work, or maybe you thought the performances were amazing and some of the best of the year. I want to hear all of that, so let me know down below in the comments, or email me at timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. All right, hopefully that gives you guys enough time. Let us jump into the spoiler section. First question that we always have to ask in this section is After the Hunt timeless? Is it something that I could see myself rewatching in the future and it becoming one of my maybe favorite movies, or maybe I want to own it on physical media? In my personal opinion, After the Hunt is not a timeless movie. It was very interesting. It was engaging. I was never bored throughout the movie, even though it is 2 hours and 20 minutes. But, it just, the biggest reason I could say of why it isn't timeless is just the characters themselves. I know that I kind of mentioned a little bit of the cons, but I really just could not connect with these characters. And it has nothing to do with the performances, because, like I mentioned, one of my favorite things of this movie is Julia Roberts, Io Debris, and Andrew Garfield. Their performances of these characters, of these persons that they feel like they're above everybody else. They feel like, they're smarter than everybody else, and they feel like they can't be questioned. And so, again, it was interesting to see them in these kind of positions where they're cornered at times. But again, because I wasn't rooting for any of them, I didn't really feel that much. And so it just sucks. I'm gonna be honest. I wanted to connect more to Alma, and I kind of wish that, like, maybe that, like, if they would have painted her in a different type of a light, that you would have been in a position of, oh man, I do not know what Alma's going to choose. Is she going to choose to believe Maggie? Is she going to choose to believe Hank? How is she going to understand or investigate this kind of situation? So that would have at least worked in my brain when viewing this experience of After the Hunt, is if I could actually connect to Alma, because she's really the main character that is going through this entire situation. She's experiencing challenges not only with two individuals that she cares about, but she's also going through, just her own body is kind of giving her challenges. Believe she has ulcers in the movie, and so she's finding that pain. And so there's a lot of things going on, and I felt like if I would have really connected to the Alma character more, I feel like I would have enjoyed this film, because I would have been just obviously just on the edge of my seat trying to wonder, okay, what is she going to decide? Who is she going to trust? Who is she going to believe in regards to what is going down in this story? And so I never got there. And then the Maggie piece also was really just, it kind of boggled my mind a little bit as to why they showed her stealing a piece of newspaper. So at the beginning of the movie, there's a dinner party. Maggie and Hank and Alma are all there with a couple of other folks from Yale. And so they're all just kind of having a conversation, talking about philosophy and theories. And then at one point, Maggie goes to the restroom and she ends up, running out of toilet paper. She checks the cabinets, and then she finds an envelope. And she sees that there's like newspapers and different types of mementos. And so she steals one of the newspapers. I actually feel like they shouldn't have done that, because that was kind of like the light of, like, in my mind, of saying, well, hey, how come you're stealing that? Why are you interested in that? Why are you being nosy? Like, what are you looking for? And because they started going down that route, even when she started saying about the assault of what Hank did to her, it made it tough. It made it tough to, like, want to believe her, because you've already seen her try to steal something. You try to see her being nosy. And then as you go on the story more and more, Maggie, her goal was, she just wanted to be like Alma. She loved Alma, and she just wanted to have some type of a relationship with her. And so I don't know. Those are the kind of aspects that I just wish could have been improved on a little bit, is maybe kind of maybe highlighting or maybe not highlighting actually, the stealing of the newspaper clip. That way, it can be more of an ambiguous thing of, well, what is Maggie doing? Why is she trying to look for stuff? And it kind of would have made me connect with her more. But once again, I could be just kind of going in circles, but I think the biggest thing is the characters. I really wish I could have just really rooted for them in a different type of way, or really been invested in what their story was going to play out. But I just couldn't get there. Second reason I didn't think that the movie was timeless is the feeling that this movie just wasn't as thrilling. And I'm pretty sure I'm asking for a different movie, but I don't know. I really would have loved if the movie was more of like a kind of a mystery, kind of just like alluding to, let's say, like a murder mystery type of movie where something happens and now the main character or the protagonist has to figure out, well, what the hell is going on here? Who are the suspects, or who are the individuals that I can really rely on, and who are the people that are lying? And the movie kind of gives off that feeling because, like I mentioned before, some of the camera work will switch up and it'll show people's hands instead of them talking. And so I thought that the movie was trying to tell us, okay, if this person is moving their hands, they're using a lot of nonverbal communication, then maybe they're trying to tell us that this person is either lying or telling the truth. And so I thought it was setting it up for that. But at the end of how it kind of resolves, again, we find out that and it's not explicitly told, but there's a scene where you have Hank and Alma together, and you can kind of tell that Hank wanted to have really a more invested relationship with Alma, and he tries to advance on her and takes it a little too far. And I think that insinuates that he actually tried to do something and assaulted Maggie. And so again, it wasn't explicit, but I think that scene was supposed to tell the audience that, well, yes, Hank did it. Maggie was telling the truth. But I don't know. I was hoping for something else at the end of the movie, because at the end you have a conversation between Maggie and Alma. They have this whole kind of a discussion at the end and saying, "Are you happy?" And I don't know. It didn't really wrap up nicely for me. It didn't leave me thinking about the movie anymore. After it was over, I kind of just walked out of the theater and I'm like, okay, well, that was a good watch, and then I moved on. That's never the feeling I want to get when I watch a movie. I want to be constantly thinking about, oh, like, what about this scene, or what about that, or like, hey, did this character make the right decision, or like, what were they telling the truth? I was hoping for more of that, but again, I'm pretty sure I'm just describing a completely different movie, and so that's again not the whole point of this. Again, Luca Guadagnino, he had a story in mind. It just didn't click with me all the way. Now, I will say that the specific scene that was my favorite of After the Hunt, it was this scene between Alma and Maggie. There's a point where Alma confronts Maggie and just calls her on a lot of her BS, calls out that she's trying to emulate her, copies her style, copies her mannerisms, and like tells her that the relationship that she's in is like a fake relationship, that she's just trying to, just garner some type of attention. And then finally tells her that she knows that she plagiarized her dissertation. And then at that moment, you just see Maggie, boom, slap Alma right across his face. And she's like, she couldn't believe that she did it herself. That whole scene was just intense. The music would kind of just rose to a higher level to add the tension. And so that was one of the best scenes of the movie for me. It was very unexpected. I didn't think Maggie was going to slap Alma, but again, there was a lot of great conversations, not only Alma and Maggie, but also between Alma and Hank. And so a lot of great stuff in regards to the movie that again, not just wanting to crap on it at all, just because I don't think it's timeless doesn't mean it's a bad movie. I still thought it was good, but again, those are just some of my opinions in regards to whether I thought After the Hunt was timeless. But who cares about that? I want to hear from all of you listening. What did you think of After the Hunt? If you've had a chance to check it out, let me know. Email me at timelessmoviepod@gmail.com. Let me know your full opinions, full reviews. I'll read them and I'll bring them up on the podcast too. And in the comments, let me know if you agree or disagree on whether this film is timeless. All right, everybody, appreciate all of you being able to listen to my full rambling thoughts on After the Hunt. This has been episode number 157 of the Timeless Movie Podcast. Make sure to check out next week's episode as we try to cover a new film and decide if it is timeless. All right, everybody, appreciate you guys listening, and I'll talk to you later.